Welcome to Empowered by Iron, the podcast for female strength athletes by female strength athletes. We are your hosts, Dr. Kristin Lander from Fiercely Fuel Nutrition Coaching and Dr. Mary Morton, scientist and weightlifter. Together, we are Empowered by Iron. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Empowered by Iron. This week is a very special episode for us for a couple reasons. We're going to talk a little bit about Female Strength Academy, which if you haven't heard about it already, you're about to hear a lot about it right now. It's actually launching today.
Yay!
It's something we've been working on for a couple months.
Many months. Many long hours.
Many long hours. And we are so excited to bring it to you and to have it grow. But we'll get into that kind of at the end of the episode. But first, we want to talk about intuitive eating. So a lot of you have heard me talk about this, talk about me using intuitive eating to be a strength athlete and just intuitive eating in general. And we wanted to do this episode because of the feedback that we got from our disordered eating podcast.
Yes.
I had so many women reach out to me and say, oh my gosh, I didn't know this was possible. I'm going to give it a shot. How do I do this? What do I do? And I started giving them, advice, and I tried to help them through what they were going through. And I recognized I need to create something for you ladies trying to overcome disordered eating with intuitive eating. So we're going to talk a little bit about the ebook that I've written for the Female Strength Academy that goes through, it's a guide basically for intuitive eating for the female strength athlete. It takes you through how to incorporate it into your life, how to then make sure you're eating enough food, the feels of it all, and then how to use it as a strength sport athlete. Yeah, so it's very encompassing, but we got a lot of feedback.
So much feedback on that disordered eating podcast. Oh my gosh. So thank you. I love hearing from people.
We absolutely love it.
And hearing how they're implementing these things, or just it was comforting to hear.
Yeah.
And so, we got tons of awesome feedback. So we decided that we should probably give you guys an episode a little bit more on intuitive eating if you want to learn how to incorporate some of that into your life.
Yeah, because I think a lot of us hear, and I mentioned this on the disordered eating episode, a lot of us hear that intuitive eating gets a bad rap. A lot of big names in the industry, which I think is super unfortunate. If you have something that's not working for you and you find something that is working for you, why would you as a company go and bash it?
Yeah, I hear a lot of bashing about intuitive eating, and I think that it comes from people maybe who don't understand what intuitive eating is. They think that people are using intuitive eating as an excuse to just eat whatever they want, when really the majority of people that do intuitive eating do it because they've tried counting macros and they've developed disordered eating habits because of counting macros. Yeah. And I've found that a lot of times people develop those disordered eating habits because they are only ever counting macros when they are in a caloric deficit. So maybe they don't have a coach. They decide to put themselves in a caloric deficit on their own. Usually they're trying to lose way too much weight way too quickly. Yep. And then the things spiral out of control. They get obsessive about counting their macros. They end up binging because that's their body's way of regulating the fact that they're in such a steep caloric deficit.
Absolutely.
And this whole cycle spins out of counting macros for some people. And I think a lot of people don't ever count macros when they're just trying to increase their performance in the gym.
Yeah, they only have the experience of cutting.
Right.
Which is if you've had a bad cut, it's a very negative experience.
Absolutely.
That's all that I did. And that's the only experience I'd known of macro tracking.
Right.
I think in the last 6 months, I have been able to track macros, specifically doing Eat for Strength. And it was so easy. It was the easiest thing I've ever done.
Right. When you have all the food that you can have, counting macros, you're like, whoa, seriously, I'm supposed to eat this much food? It's kind of eye-opening. And you realize I probably have really been under eating. No wonder I've been binging.
Yeah, which is something that I cover in the book is, once you get in the habit of incorporating intuitive eating into your life, we then walk you through okay, now that you've done this, let's figure out if you're eating enough.
Right. Right. So I would say from an athletic standpoint, a performance standpoint only, if we're only looking at that, I think counting macros is probably the best option, but it's not the best option if it leads you into an eating disorder or disordered eating. For some people, their personalities are too obsessive about this stuff. And so it's not the best option for those people by any means, because then we're putting their health at risk. And so then why are we doing it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you've heard that intuitive eating is bad, it's not. It's not the most ideal. And if you do intuitive eating right, it's actually very advantageous, especially mentally.
Right. If you are mindful about it and you do all the things that you're going to lay out, like it can really be healing and helpful for, I think, a lot of athletes.
It can be really frustrating to see like memes on Instagram of people saying, I'm eating intuitively, and they're eating like an entire pizza.
Right.
That's not eating intuitively. That's just being an asshole.
Right. I do kind of joke about like, I don't do intuitive eating because intuitively I want to eat an entire pizza, but that's not really what intuitive eating is. That literally is just eating like an asshole.
Yeah. And I wouldn't even say that's intuitive.
It's not.
That's just you being like, I don't have any limits.
That's exactly.
Yeah,
it's eating without limits. And that's not what intuitive eating is.
It has limits, but the limits are set by yourself. So it can be very hard, especially for someone who doesn't understand their body and doesn't understand what their body needs. But if you learn about your body and you learn what your body needs, it's gonna be a real good time.
So tell us what intuitive eating is.
Okay, so intuitive eating is basically the simplest form of eating. It's the form of eating that really every person should be eating, right? Like you should be listening to your body, when it's hungry, what it wants to eat, and feed it. Like, and then stop when you're full. That's intuitive eating. Eat when you're hungry, stop when you're full.
It sounds so simple.
It's so simple and it's so complex.
How did we get so messed up?
Because intuitive eating doesn't sell products. Unfortunately, like that's the hard part, is like you think of keto diets or paleo diets or even flexible dieting, like coaches or books or, seminars or whatever, like all these things, all these really complicated things that make a profit.
Well, so I think that the fitness industry and the diet industry has done a really good job of getting everyone super, super confused. So we have to rely on like the newest thing that comes out as opposed to just listening to your body and giving your body what it needs. Like we don't know what our body needs anymore. We're so confused. We're supposed to eat fat and we're not supposed to eat fat. We're supposed to eat carbs and we're not supposed to eat carbs. And we're supposed to eat all the protein. We're not supposed to eat all the protein. We're supposed to only eat meat and no vegetables.
Yeah.
And we're supposed to be vegan.
Yeah. I mean, there's just so many things.
Right.
And it's so stupid. It's so confusing. And then you just rely on the Google machine to tell you what you need to do. Right. When really, for all of us anyone, but specifically those of us who suffered from disordered eating, like you have the tools in you. You've just ignored them for years.
Yes.
Like you have all the things that you need. We've just forgotten how to listen to them. So intuitive eating is no tracking, no counting, no measuring, no weighing, and no restrictions. I think that that's the most important part for people coming out of disordered eating, is that there is you can't have this. If you're doing keto, carbs are off limits. If you're doing low fat, fats are off limits. If you're doing low carb, carbs are off limits. Like there's none of that. There's just you listening to your body. Now, if you're a strength sport athlete, you do have some guidelines, I'd say. I wouldn't even call them restrictions, but guidelines. Like you need to get your protein in. Honest to God, you need to get your protein in, and we need to make sure you're eating enough fat to keep you hormonally balanced and regulated, right? We want to keep everything in working order. Yep. But other than that, it doesn't fucking matter, and it drives me nuts.
So you're not taking any food groups and saying these are off limits. You're not taking any foods themselves and saying these are off limits. But you're also not saying I'm going to eat 2 pies for dinner.
Well, yeah. I mean, sometimes I do, but
2 whole pies?
No. I mean, there's an open pie in my fridge at all times because I'm going through this phase of pie, but I don't eat the whole pie. I'll eat like a piece because I'm craving it.
Right.
I eat it and I'm done and it's over and my weight stays the same.
I think it's so amazing to hear you say that because I remember the days of the Mary who would eat the whole pie.
I couldn't stop myself. And that's when I was confused. I was binge eating, obviously, but I also thought that was my body intuitively telling me it wanted to eat the whole pie. Like, no, I was binging because I was missing all kinds of nutrients. Now I'm just like,
because you were really restricting.
I was really restricting.
Yeah.
And now I can have a half of a pie, or I can have a 16th of a pie. It just depends on the day and what I'm craving or what I want.
Right.
So intuitive eating, speaking of what you want, is about hunger cues and listening to your hunger cues. People say hunger cues, they throw them out. You know, what is a hunger cue? And it's really just your body. I mean, it's just listening to what your body's telling you, which sounds stupid and hokey pokey, but like, that's how we lived for years and hundreds of thousands of years, or however long humans have been. I'm not an evolutionary biologist. I don't know how long we've been here. It's been a minute, maybe a couple seconds in terms of Earth's history. I feel like I need to clarify that. I don't fucking know. Okay.
Well, okay, but there are some things you know the research. You've read some really good research on intuitive eating, right?
Yeah, I mean, the little of it that there is, a lot of it has to do with collegiate athletes or people who have had an athletic background overcoming disordered eating. And what they found is those who used intuitive eating rather than any type of macro tracking had a better outcome in terms of their disordered eating. They were to free themselves from their disordered eating habits better than those who did macro tracking. Now, this is not to say that macro tracking does not work for people coming out of disordered eating. It does.
Right. I had some really disordered eating habits that I was able to resolve through having a coach and tracking macros.
Right.
And that for me was very helpful because I was able to focus on the whys of why I had, like, figure out why I had disordered eating, what was leading me into that. I had a lot of emotional eating issues, and just knowing that there was someone else handling the macros for me. So I didn't have to be like, well, I kind of had a heavy squat day, so I'm going to eat 100 extra grams of carbs. Like, no, it doesn't work that way. So for me, macro tracking was therapeutic and helpful. But for you, it was the opposite.
It was like hellish to know that someone else was in charge of my food. Not that they weren't capable people. I felt like I'm so prideful. I felt like I should know. I mean, I knew all the things. Why couldn't I do it? But yeah, so like I said, if you've overcome disordered eating from macro tracking, I'm not taking anything away from you. I think however you can come out of it is phenomenal.
Whatever works for you is what's best for you.
Yeah, and don't let anyone tell you that what you're doing is wrong. If it's working for you,
it's not wrong.
Walk away from them. You don't need that negativity in your life.
Amen, sister.
Yeah, and so speaking of that, intuitive eating does not look the same for everyone. My intuitive eating is going to be different than someone else. I'd say yours, but we know what yours is, eating 2 pies a night.
I've gotten, you'd be proud of me. I've gotten much better with the intuitive eating thing.
Very proud.
My weight does go up a little when I do that.
Yeah,
but,
it happens. You get a better feel with it over time. Like, I'm pretty good about keeping my weight almost the exact same.
Right.
And I can have big fluctuations in calories. But
right.
I figure out how to keep myself
level.
Yeah.
My intuitive eating looks like this. I will be like, if I'm not strictly tracking macros, I'm like, it's the end of the day. I have 100 grams of carbs left and like 20 grams of fat. I'm going to have some almond butter and rice cakes, and then I don't weigh and measure it.
I think that's fair. I think a lot of people would benefit from that because that takes away some of the restriction.
Right.
Like, I think a lot of people, if they tracked half or 3/4 of the day and they got to the end of the day and they they know enough about food to say, this is approximately, let's say 100 grams of carbs, maybe 30 grams of fat, whatevs, and let it go. But as long, if they have 3/4 of the day tracked, they at least know that they've gotten it, maybe their adequate protein amount. And then from there, it's not a fuck it. It's not a binge for those you intuitive eater haters. It's just, I think this is approximately what it is. I'm going to go with it and forget about it.
Exactly.
I am proud of you.
Thanks.
You're welcome. But like, for me, I don't love eating first thing when I wake up. I'll eat a little bit and then I'll wait a long time. I'll have my pre and post, and then I like eating late at night. And that's just how my body, that's when I get hungry. That's what my body likes. And it is what it is. And other people might be different. They might find that they wake up in the morning, they're ready to eat. And then at night, they just want a snack. And that's fine. Like, you don't need to eat big dinners. You don't need to eat every 3 hours. Like, you need to figure out what works for you. like we've said before, optimally for like muscle protein synthesis and to keep your body in a positive state of muscle growth, you do want to eat every 3 to 4 hours. But if you're just coming out of disordered eating, like throw that shit in the garbage, figure out what's working for you, and then you can build from there.
Right. Because if you are eating on a specific schedule that doesn't correlate with your hunger cues, it's really difficult to learn those hunger cues, right? You don't know the different levels of hungry.
Right. And you'll find that once you do this, after you had your first meal, you'll essentially be hungry in 3 or 4 hours. Like, that's just how your body works. But until you learn how to listen to your body, you're doing yourself a disservice by saying, I'm going to eat every 3 hours.
Right.
Stop, listen, then move forward.
So what is a hunger cue?
So hunger cue, great question. It's like you're reading a script I wrote.
Why would I do that?
I don't know. So a hunger cue is a biological cue. It's essentially you all know that feeling of sensation of hunger. It's hard to describe, but it's a feeling of hunger. And then there's a extreme hunger where your stomach is gurgling, and then there's like the extreme where you're dizzy, you don't feel that great, and you're almost not hungry anymore.
Where does hangry fit in there?
Hangry would be that one.
Oh, okay.
Hangry is like you're right before the dizzy stage, and you need to eat.
Gonna kill someone.
Yeah. We don't want, as an intuitive eater, you don't really want to fall into the hangry. You want to try to avoid the hangry, and you want to avoid the like super full. And
I refer to that as Thanksgiving full.
Right. And that's the thing. That's what we were talking about before we started recording this is when I say full, Kristin immediately thought of Thanksgiving full. But there's like 5 steps, not 5. There's like 2 or 3 steps before that.
Right.
That you should have stopped. That also qualify as full.
Right.
And I think people forget that because we've been in this restrictive and then binge culture.
Yeah, if ever you've binged, you know that feeling of that Thanksgiving full, that like, oh my gosh, I'm going to explode. I hate myself. Why did I do this to myself? Yes. We don't recommend getting yourself to that point. But everyone, especially if you've binged, I think that feeling, that idea of being full, you think of that and it's scary. Yeah. But you're not talking about getting to that level of full.
No. In the hunger scale, there's like between 5 and 10 you could classify as starting to be full. 10 is like you're sick, like you want to throw up. That's what most people associate with being full, is that they're so full stuffed that they want to puke. But really, you want to be back at a level 6 where you're just like, oh, okay, I'm good. And you're full, you're satisfied. But learning how to bridge that gap between what's a 6 and what's a 10 is what I'm trying to teach everyone with this freaking book. It's like, we need to teach you what the difference between a 6 and a 10 is, and it takes practice. You're gonna have days where you're gonna be an 8 and you're gonna be like, oh my god, I fucked up. That's okay. The next day, just take yourself back and figure out what a difference between an 8 and a 6 is.
And it's not fucking up, because now you know that an 8 is uncomfortable and I don't want to be an 8 again. That's
the hard part about intuitive eating, is knowing that you're not fucking up, you're learning.
Yeah.
Like, you're just learning what doesn't work and what you maybe shouldn't do next time. Don't let all the haters hate on you. So then I want to talk about, like I said, like, if you've been on a restrict, binge, repeat kick, then you've likely ignored these cues for a long time. And we start thinking of being in a state of hunger as good, right? Okay. So if you're restricting, you think being hungry is good. That means you're losing fat, you're losing weight, and that being full is bad, which is what we just said. Intuitive eating, we want to break that down and say, no, being hungry is hungry, being full is full.
It's not good or bad.
It's neither good nor bad. And there are no prizes, as I say in our Eat for Strength course. There are no prizes for being hungry. You get no gold star if you're hungry all day.
Right.
Like, you're just doing yourself a disservice, especially as a strength athlete.
Right. But also, there are levels of hungry that are okay, right? That are fine to like live in that level of hungry. It's not like the hangry. It's the like,
I should probably go eat.
I probably should need to eat in the next hour or so.
Exactly. Yeah. And I break that down in the book, like trying to learn what your hunger cues are. It's like stopping and thinking, am I really hungry? And then waiting 30 minutes and seeing how that level of hunger varies.
Right.
But not like 30 minutes for like 3 hours and then you eat. It's just
right.
like a quick
right. Like
30
keep
minute,
putting it off.
Right.
Right.
Quick 30-minute. Okay, that I see that difference. Now let's eat.
And let's just talk for a second that a lot of times people get thirsty confused with hungry.
Oh my God.
Especially if you're not used to drinking a lot of water.
Yes.
A lot of times we think that we're hungry, and really it's our mechanisms for thirst are so diminished that they're often mistaken for hunger.
Mm-hmm. Take your body weight in pounds, divide that by 2. That's like the minimum number of ounces you should be taking in a day in water.
Right. So pounds divided by 2 in ounces. And I like to tell people 75% of your body weight in pounds in ounces of water, I think is a pretty good place to be.
Yeah. So somewhere between there, if you're not getting at least that, you need to up your water intake and then reassess your hunger.
Yep.
Yeah. And then the last thing I want to talk about specifically about intuitive eating is the difference between a craving and a binge. Because a lot of the times when we hear cravings, we think of like crazy, oh my God, I have to have it right now. My life is over if I don't have it.
Right.
That's what we
like
think of with
tearing
craving.
into a whole pie, or like a
cookies.
giant bag of chocolate.
Yeah, something.
Yeah.
So you think a lot of posts on social media highlight different ways to beat the cravings. So like, for example, you're craving pie, or like, oh, well, here's this cheater low-cal pie, and that doesn't do what it needs, because a craving is your body's way of telling you it needs something, whether that's, you need more sugar or you need more fat. Like sometimes I'll get a craving for something salty, and so I'll eat something, savory, and sometimes I'll get something, a sweet craving.
Mm-hmm.
And you go get something sweet. That's just your body's way of telling you what it needs.
Uh-huh.
And the more we ignore it and try to fight it, the more likely you are to binge on that later, especially if you have a history of it.
Right. Yeah. Yes. So putting off those cravings can be really bad. I do this with my nutrition clients, my one-on-one clients. If they are like, I am really craving a pizza, I'm like, and if they're on a cut, like, okay, let's manage that. Let's go a couple of days. And if you're still craving it, we're going to find a way to work it in.
Right.
And because the more you ignore those, the worse it gets, leads to a massive binge. And especially if we've got an athlete who's trying to cut weight for a meet, this can be really dangerous territory.
That can derail the whole thing.
Exactly. So we have to figure out how can we work in and manage this craving, because sometimes they don't go away.
Right. Well, in intuitive eating, I would even say, like, if you have a craving, try to act on it that day. Like, because a craving is not a thing. It's not so overwhelming that it needs to be like an entire binge.
Right.
Like, I can have a craving for mac and cheese. That means I'm driving home from the gym and I'm thinking, man, what sounds good for dinner? Mac and cheese. Mm-hmm. Anything else I were to make that night besides mac and cheese would not satisfy me. And I would end up making mac and cheese anyway.
You would eat your regular dinner and then you would go make mac and cheese after.
Yes. And it took me a while to learn, like, oh, hey, dum-dum, why don't you just make mac and cheese and save yourself a full dinner's calories?
Yeah. Eat what you want.
Eat what you want. And that's the other part, is like learning how to act upon your cravings responsibly.
Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah, and then incorporating your hunger cues, so that way I've got my mac and cheese. I'm not going to eat the whole box because it's like 1,000 calories. I'm going to take the third of it. That's a serving. Mm-hmm. See how my body's doing, and then either stop or maybe having a little bit more. But like we associate cravings again with being this negative thing of like, you need to fight the cravings. But intuitive eating, you need to accept the cravings. You need to embrace the cravings and figure out how to incorporate those cravings, what your body needs, into your daily routine. Yeah, whatever it is.
Yep.
Well, because it's so
figure
dumb.
out how to make it fit.
Right. And like, you don't need to have all these low cal, low fat, whatever concoctions that are made on the internet for, all these people in a cut when you're trying to repair your relationship with food. You need to eat what you need to eat.
Right.
And move on.
I talk about this in our Eat for Strength cut course.
Yes.
I talk about that. Like, just don't have the fat-free version of the full fat food that you really want, and don't have the sugar-free version of the super carby food that you really want, like find a way to work those things in, or just don't have them on a cut, because it's never going to satisfy you until sometimes we need to push like the emergency button in a cut and maybe have some of those things, but you save them for that. You don't eat them on a regular basis because it's never really satisfying that craving. Find a way to work that food in, even on a cut, or just don't have it.
Yeah.
Anyway, this isn't about a cut though.
So in intuitive eating, as I said, you need to not restrict anything, because restriction is going to lead or cause binge eating. And cravings are just a way for your body to tell you what it needs. And if it really needs some things, that's when you're going to experience those intense cravings. That's when those people who are on a cut and they're like, holy shit, if I don't get a slice of pie right now. Pie is obviously on my brain. I have cherry in the fridge right now. Got raspberry in the freezer. Good to go. But yeah, they're like, if I don't get pie right now, I'm going to lose it. And there's a difference. The more you restrict, the more you get those intense cravings. But you'll find as you do intuitive eating, the more you fuel your body, the more you give it nutritious. Thank you. Nutritious food. Kristen's the smart one. I'm the asshole. The more you give it nutritious food and you feed it not put it in a caloric deficit, the less of these intense cravings that you're going to get. Right. But I will say, so last night I almost had a binge, and it's because I'm super stressed about a few things. I'm not going to get into them right now because they're unresolved. When they're unresolved, I'll talk about them. But I know that for myself, if it's some emotional issue I'm having and I feel that I need to binge, I now have the control to recognize I'm eating emotionally. I need to stop right now. I could eat this whole pie and nothing's going to be fixed.
Yes.
And so that's a huge cue for me. If you find yourself, binge, like starting a binge and not really knowing why, think about what your stress levels are. Think about what you could resolve outside of food that could help you fix your food. So like, there's something I need to fix that's outside of my food, and I will no longer need to binge on pies.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, I talk about this a lot with my one-on-one clients, is that, like recognize, so you had a binge, go back, recognize like what was going on in that moment. How was I feeling? What did I think that this food was going to solve? And then realizing that the food didn't solve anything. So next time when you catch that happening, stop and ask yourself those questions. What's going on? What can I do that will actually help solve the issue, as opposed to make me feel good at this moment and then make me feel bad later?
Right.
Yeah. And that's I think what emotional eating, like getting out of that cycle, helps. I also think too, just like spending time at a caloric balance really helps. God,
yes.
Right.
Yes.
Because you can have some more of those foods. You can kind of understand what's happening with your body. And a lot of the times, like we said in the beginning, those binges stem from a steep caloric deficit. So you can sometimes get yourself out of it by just eating in a caloric balance for a while. And you don't recommend doing intuitive eating to cut weight. Like, it's all about being in a caloric balance, right?
I would only recommend that if you have a coach who does intuitive eating, who can help guide you through. Like, I cut on intuitive eating, but that's because I was in such a good space of being able to control myself. And I almost did like the half track, half intuitive eating. So I would track like 75% of my day to make sure I got protein in, and then kind of just relax the last quarter of the day. But yeah, no, if you are coming out of any type of disordered eating, do not cut. Stop it. Just eat at maintenance, or whatever your body tells you that is. Trust me, you'll figure it out. Your body will tell you what it needs once you learn how to listen to it. And then once you get your footing, once you get very comfortable, you can start looking into cutting. However, I still recommend trying to cut with macros. So just give yourself time. If you haven't repaired your relationship with food, then there's no point in cutting.
Right.
No point. And then finally, we want to talk about intuitive eating and being a strength sport athlete. This is just going to be really quick. But basically, it's totally possible. like we said, intuitive eating has gotten a lot of hate from people saying that it's irresponsible, it's dumb. It's none of the things. I have put on significant strength.
Mm-hmm.
I feel great about my body. My mind is at peace with food, and I'm a strength sport athlete.
Right.
If you're trying to do something and like tracking macros and it never ever seems to pan out for you, like you can never actually make it work for you without binging or having some type of meltdown.
Yeah. Or becoming really obsessive.
Yes. Or doing what I would do where I would hoard all my food to the end of the day.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
You're starving all day and then you eat all your calories at night.
Right. It's so dumb. Then maybe it's time you try something else for a bit. Yeah.
Yeah. And literally don't let anyone tell you that it's wrong.
Yeah. Tell them Mary said, shut up.
Well, figure it out for yourself. Maybe it's not the right thing for you, but the only way to find out is to try it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's the same as with our training, right? Like we try different things in training and like, well, okay, that training cycle, that thing that I thought was going to work out, that didn't work out so well.
Yep.
And you try something new.
Exactly. Yeah. It's all trial and error. There's no failure. There's just learning what did and did not work.
Mm-hmm.
So, like I said, I've created an ebook to help guide you through how to incorporate intuitive eating into your life. And that is going to be found on Female Strength Academy.
Mm-hmm. FemaleStrengthAcademy.com.
Which will obviously be linked below. Kristin, tell us about Female Strength Academy.
Oh my gosh. I've been wanting to tell you guys about Female Strength Academy since its inception.
Good word.
And thank you. I'm smart. And Mary wouldn't let me until it happened because it's been like 4 months in the works at least.
We thought we were going to launch it March 1st. And then once I got down and dirty into everything that we wanted to create, I was like, Kristin, there's no fucking way we can launch this March 1st.
So here's what happened is we've had Empowered by Iron, the podcast, and off of it stems some courses and just all these different resources to help you ladies. We realized that there were a lot of resources out there that were lacking. There was a lack of resources for female strength athletes that were not freaking detox teas and stupid bullshit. So we thought, like, how can we continue our mission and grow our mission to help these women, you guys, improve and have more information? And so what that ended up looking like was we created something called Female Strength Academy, which is an online library of resources for
created by and for female strength athletes, just like this podcast, but
exactly,
it is more encompassing.
So Female Strength Academy is like the parent company now of Empowered by Iron.
So if you go to FemaleStrengthAcademy.com, which you all should, you'll see in the top that there's podcast. There's a podcast menu option. That'll take you to Empowered by Iron. Empowered by Iron is Female Strength Academy. Female Strength Academy is Empowered by Iron, and then some.
Right. It allows us to like really grow our mission of putting out evidence-based information for female strength athletes. So we have a lot of articles that we've written on there, blogs, spin-offs of our podcast episodes put into text, basically.
Yeah, informational guides like our hormones episode, our protein episode. So you can go there and you can find how much protein should I be eating? Well, there it is, right there.
All in words that you can read as opposed to having to go back and listen to a whole podcast and try to find things. So, and we also have our research article summaries. So we summarize research for you guys. We find articles that look interesting, and summarize them and give you the facts and how we think that may be relatable to you as an athlete or maybe not pertain to you at all, based on whatever is found in the research. We have
we have ebook, and keep in mind that this is just the beginning. So we have the ebook, as I said. We also have I've written a 10-week strength training template. It's free. It's downloadable. I want you guys to give it a shot. Tell me what you think. We also were so fortunate to be able to collaborate with Courtney Batchelor Weightlifting. She wrote us 2 weightlifting programs. One is an intermediate and one is a beginner. Those are found on the site. So it's specifically for women. She made it. She's fantastic. hopefully her CB weightlifting should be dropping either this week or next. So we will make sure to talk about that when it does, because she's doing an amazing project too.
She is.
Specifically for female Olympic weightlifters.
Yes. Yep.
We also have Lauren Polivka, who is going to be on our first Experts of Iron, which will be dropping here very soon. She is a
doctor of physical therapy.
Mm-hmm. And she has graciously written us specifically weightlifting and powerlifting warm-ups.
Yep, like prehab and warm-ups. So everyone's been asking us about prehab and if we think that it is beneficial, and like, what do you do for warm-ups? And so we asked Lauren to write that stuff for you guys. So for powerlifters and weightlifters, there's 2 different ones.
So go check those out. Those ladies, we only called upon the best. Mm-hmm. And we only hope to grow in collaboration and grow in our resources. And finally, for everyone who's been asking, when are we having our next Eat for Strength course? Woo! This is it. I mean, forever, Eat for Strength is going to live on Female Strength Academy.
Yep.
It is now an online self-guided course. You can purchase the course through our website, and then you'll be added to the Facebook group page just like you would normally, except now it's kind of a self-paced, self-guided thing.
Right.
You will always have our support in the Facebook group page, and along with anyone who's ever completed the course. We're there for questions. We're there to help you because we want you to be as strong as possible. And we're hoping that with this course, with it being in the format that it's in, we'll be able to reach all of you, more people, more often, rather than you having to wait for a course date to sign up. Right. And finally,
Eat for Strength cut. We designed a cut. We had so many of our Eat for Strength ladies would go through the course. They'd be like, okay, so like if I wanted to cut a weight class, how would I do that? Mm-hmm. And so we realized that there was a need. There's such a need for women to, like, whether you're trying to cut a weight class or you just don't feel comfortable in your body.
That's a big one.
That happens, right? Like, we can say all day long, no, you just need to eat for performance. You just need to eat for performance. But if you are uncomfortable in your body, or if you're at an unhealthy, like, body fat percentage, then we could say it till we're blue in the face, but you're going to want to cut at some point. Mm-hmm. And so we decided, let's take our same principles that we apply to Eat for Strength. Let's take all the work I do with my one-on-one athletes that are in a cut, and I work, my number one goal with all my athletes that are in a cut is to preserve their strength as much as possible. So we put all that into a 10-week cut program.
What's nice about this course is that it's a time limit. It's not a weight goal, because I think a lot of us think we have a number in mind, but really we may be comfortable at a different weight than what we actually thought. So it's a time limit. It's 10 weeks. After 10 weeks, you're done. Right. We move you into maintenance, and we continue to get you strong there. So it's just 10 weeks. Yeah. So it's better for sanity.
For sure. Well, I think compliance is higher when you know that it's just a short period of time. Your compliance is going to be better, because if you decide to overeat, for several weeks, then you've kind of blown your 10-week cut. So I think it makes compliance a little bit better. You're going to see results a little bit faster if you do it that way. I think it's also a really good gap between trying to do something on your own versus having a one-on-one coach. So this is, I know finances for some people are a little bit of an issue they know that they want to cut. They know that they need help. They know that they need an expert to help them, but paying $100 or more a month isn't in the budget for them. Right. So we created this resource where it is on your own, but we're still there to support you.
Mm-hmm. We're there for questions. We're there for commiserating.
Yeah.
We're there for you. And we only hope that Eat for Strength and Female Strength Academy will just continue to grow and grow and grow and grow. And if you all have suggestions of things you would love to see on the site, or any type of resources you would love to see us create that could really be beneficial for you, let us do the brunt work for you. We're happy to do all of that and get that resource to you.
Yes. And we will be having more eBooks coming out. when I can write them. I have 2 in the works right now.
Right. We're just getting this up, and once we get this out, the content will be coming.
Yep.
The final thing we want to talk about is something you may have already noticed has happened. We already mentioned it on our Instagram, but we wanted to make sure that everyone understood, was on the same page of what's going on. We now have 2 Instagram accounts. We have Female Strength Academy and we have Empowered by Iron. Previously, Empowered by Iron is where you saw every bit of our content. Everything we posted was Empowered by Iron. It still is associated with Empowered by Iron, but we have taken Empowered by Iron, the original Instagram page, and we have rebranded it to Female Strength Academy.
Right. That's where our community happens. That's where you guys interact with us. The way you've been interacting with us on Instagram as Empowered by Iron is now Female Strength Academy.
Yes.
So that's where we're at. That's where we're hanging out. That's where we're answering questions on Tuesdays and Thursdays. That's where we're chatting with y'all.
But if you happen to tag Empowered by Iron, we are also still there. We're just a different account that's not as active, that just has the podcast episodes.
Right.
So nothing is going to change in terms of content on our original Instagram page. The name is just going to change. Everything is going to remain the same.
Right. So make sure you're following us. We just changed the name. You're already following us on
Nothing
Female
changed
Strength
for
Academy.
you. Just if you search for Empowered by Iron, you're going to be brought to a different page. But you're now part of Female Strength Academy. So
hell yeah.
Welcome. And I guess to end it all, go join Female Strength Academy on Facebook. It's a Facebook group page. It's where we answer a lot of questions. We do Thursday Q&As, and where we just have a good time.
Heck yeah.
And if you would like to support us, you can support us on Patreon. We offer a few different perks for our Patreon supporters, like input on episodes, and you can even come to our monthly meetings and help us kind of guide the future of Female Strength Academy and Empowered by Iron.
Right, because let's not forget that Female Strength Academy and Empowered by Iron is for you. It's for you. We do this for you, and we want you to have input and say into the content that you see and what's relevant to you.
If you want to see a resource, tell us. We'll create it. Like, I want to spend all of my time helping every single one of you figure out the best way to navigate the strength world personally for yourselves. That's our goal.
Hell yeah.
So thank you for being part of our mission. We are almost at 100 fucking episodes.
Hell yeah.
And this is just timely. Thank you so much for supporting us. If any of you are still listening to the podcast episode at this point, it's a long one. Thank you so much. We will talk to you in just a few short days when Lauren Polifka comes on.
Yes.
All right, ladies. Bye.
Bye.